12 years operating 4 meters below sea level in Tel Aviv bunkers that Google Maps will never index. Exactly at 3:14 a.m., in a smoky cafe in Istanbul, under a mist that hid the Bosphorus and my own sins, my life as the architect stopped being a career and became a death sentence. I wasn't there to collect missile coordinates or activation codes. I was there to hold a brushed aluminum flash drive that weighed more than a traitor's conscience. What the news tells you about geopolitical stability is a fairy tale designed to make you sleep soundly. The brutal truth that the high command hides under lock and key is that in the shadow war, the most dangerous asset isn't the enemy you hunt through a rifle scope. The real danger is the secret your own agency keeps to ensure you are the next to be archived the moment you stop being useful. I was trained to be the puppet master, but I discovered the hard way that I was just the string that needed to be cut. I almost lost my life and something far more precious than that to bring this frequency to your ears. Listen to every word I say now with surgical attention, because what I saw in that bunker should not be known by anyone who wishes to keep breathing. If you have the courage to look at what happens in the dark, where laws do not reach and names are erased, listen closely. The system thrives on your silence. I only need you to hear what they tried to silence in me. Settle in and draw your chairs closer to the heat of these flames. The cold outside seems to want to remind this old body of mine that the time for inhabiting this tent is coming to an end. It's funny how, when night approaches, memory decides to take us back not to moments of glory, but to the days when the earth trembled beneath our feet and we discovered we were made of dust. You see me here, with these hands stained by age, and perhaps you cannot imagine that they once held the reins of destinies that the world does not even suspect. I was the architect. That's what they called me in those windowless rooms in Tel Aviv. I believed that life was a floor plan, something I could design, build, and tear down according to the needs of the cause. How foolish I was. On that morning in Istanbul, the air was heavy. You know that cold that doesn't just touch the skin but seems to want to enter the bones to steal what's left of life? It was like that. Sultanahmet was shrouded in a gray mist, a veil that hid the domes of the mosques. The smell of roasted chestnuts from the street carts mixed with the heavy, stifling diesel smoke from the boats cutting across the Bosphorus. I was there, standing on the perimeter, feeling that icy arrogance I called professionalism. I scanned the area technically, the emergency exits, the angle of my cover snipers, the exact distance to the extraction car. I felt like the owner of the board. I was the puppet master, and the world was just my stage. I entered the cafe. The place was smoky, a den of secrets and whispers. I spotted my contact, a high-ranking Iranian informant. He was sitting at a rustic wooden table, but he did not have the calm expected of someone negotiating the fate of nations. He didn't touch the tea in front of him. When our eyes met, I saw something that no training can mask, the face of absolute fear. He didn't look like a man who was selling his country. He looked like a man who had already been sold by God. He pushed an object toward me, the tactical anchor as we called it, a brushed aluminum flash drive. The metallic sound of it scraping across the rustic wood echoed in my mind like a cannon blast, louder than all the hubbub of the cafe. When I reached out to take it, our fingers touched for a brief second. I felt a sticky, warm moisture. I looked at his hands and saw his cuticles open, bleeding from how much he had bitten them in despair. The taste of copper rose to my throat. It was then that he leaned in and whispered the words that broke my reality. They already know. My heart gave a jolt, an arrhythmia that seemed to want to tear my chest open. They know? My men should have aborted the meeting if there was risk. I pressed the communicator in my ear, searching for my team's voice on Channel 4. What I heard was nothing. A white, static silence, as if the whole world had been turned off. I felt an unbearable pressure at the base of my skull, a physical pain that began to blur my vision. The colors of the cafe began to fade, turning into indistinct shadows. The sound of voices around me became a distant hum, as if I were being submerged in deep, dark waters. I was no longer the architect. I was just an old man, alone in a foreign city, surrounded by ghosts I helped create. I felt the ground disappear beneath me. Breath became short, a useless effort to capture the air that seemed to have turned into lead. I was slipping, leaving everything I knew, falling off the map, out of life, into the most absolute and terrible unknown. That instant, my children, it is difficult to put into human words something that the soul understands only when breath leaves. Imagine that your whole life you wore a suit of iron armor, heavy, rusted by choices, by paranoia, and by the weight of the secrets we keep. And then suddenly, in the middle of the chaos of an Istanbul cafe, someone undoes the last clasp. What I felt first was not death, but the end of gravity. Do you know what that is? The architect, that man who calculated every step, who mistrusted his own shadow, simply ceased to exist. There was a snap, soft, like the breaking of a silk thread that was already too tense. And, in a sigh, all that agony in my chest, the taste of copper in my mouth, and the cold in my bones vanished. There remained only a lightness I never knew was possible. I was no longer a body, I was a thought expanding. I looked back for a brief moment, but I didn't see the streets of Sultanahmet or the lights of Tel Aviv. I saw only a gentle darkness. It wasn't the pitch black of a grave, you see. It was like the black velvet that protects a jewel, or like the mother's womb before the first cry. I was immersed in an absolute silence, but it wasn't an empty silence. It was a silence that listened. Every beat of my heart, which down there had already stopped, here seemed to echo like a drum of peace. And then, from the center of that nothingness, the light emerged. Oh, the light. If I spent the rest of my days describing it, I would still fail. It wasn't like the sun of Israel that burns the retina and punishes the skin. It was alive. It was a clarity that didn't hit me, it went through me. It was of a gold so pure it made the earth's gold look like dirty clay. And the heat? It wasn't the heat of a fireplace, but the heat of an embrace you waited your whole life to receive. I felt that every mistake, every betrayal I planned, every lie I told to protect the system, all of it was being exposed. But curiously, there was no condemnation. There was only an overwhelming truth that said, "Finally, you have stopped running." And sound began to fill that infinite space. At first, it sounded like the noise of many waters, as if the Bosphorus and all the oceans of the world were pouring into a crystal waterfall. But as I drew closer to the light, the sound transformed. It was a harmony of thousands of voices, but none of them spoke. They celebrated. It was a song I seemed to know since before I was born, a melody written in my DNA, but which the noise of the world had made me forget. I floated, but there was no direction. Wherever I looked, the architecture of that place was made of glory and transparency. There was no more aluminum flash drive, no more field cleaning. The weight of that piece of metal, which seconds before seemed to crush my soul, had been replaced by a sense of belonging so deep that I began to cry. But my tears were light too. I was crossing the veil, the border between what is fleeting and what is eternal. I knew, with a certainty that logic never gave me, that I was going home. The architect had been just a poorly written role. Here I was just a son returning from exile. It was at that moment, my dear ones, when I thought the sweetness of that encounter had already reached its peak, that the music fell silent for a sacred second. The light intensified, becoming an almost solid presence. And there, in that immensity of gold and peace, I realized I was not alone. In the midst of that absolute clarity, something, or someone, was standing there, waiting for me. The shadow of a figure that emanated an authority that would make kings kneel, but a tenderness that would make a child rest. My knees, which were no longer made of flesh, gave way. A sacred dread took hold of me, but it was a dread that healed. I felt the gaze, a gaze that knew Istanbul, that knew the bunker, that knew every shadow I tried to hide. And what I saw coming toward me was not the judgment I expected, but something I didn't even dare to name. And there, prostrate in that immensity that was neither floor nor sky, but glory itself, I felt the presence. There was no sound of footsteps, how could there be if time did not pass there? But I knew, with every atom of my being, that he was before me. My children, close your eyes for a second and try to imagine what it is to be seen, not as the world sees us, by our clothes or our positions, but to be seen from the inside, where even we do not dare to look. He who approached was not a judge with a law book in hand. He was the very light I saw before, but now concentrated in a form that emanated a majesty. Oh, a majesty that made my entire career, all the state secrets, and all my supposed intelligence seem like dust in the wind. I tried to hide my hands, you know. Those hands that, moments before, in the cafe in Istanbul, were stained by the sweat and blood of others' despair. I felt the weight of every asset I used and discarded, of every lie I called strategy. But then, he did something I never would have expected. He did not ask me for explanations. He did not show me my dossier. Without him moving his lips, his voice echoed inside my chest, a sound that felt like the embrace of a father reuniting with a son given up for dead. It was a communication from spirit to spirit, an absolute knowing. He told me, in the deepest silence I have ever experienced, that everything I had done to build my kingdom of shadows was just a desperate attempt to find the love that was now before me. And the miracle happened, you see. While he looked at me, I felt a wave of heat wash through my soul. It was as if warm, crystal-clear water were washing every dark corner of my memory. The remorse I carried for the architect, the guilt for the lives I manipulated, the dread of the betrayal I had just discovered on the flash drive, all of it was dissolved, gone. There remained only a purity I hadn't felt since I was a little boy, before the world taught me to be cynical. I understood, in that moment of divine revelation, that the only architecture that really matters, the only one that survives the grave, is that built with mercy. The system I served was made of fear. His kingdom was made of a freedom I didn't even know existed. He showed me, in a glimpse of eternity, that every suffering I caused or endured had a purpose of redemption that my limited mind could never architect. I was submerged in an ocean of forgiveness so vast that I only wanted to dissolve there forever. I no longer wanted Istanbul. I no longer wanted Tel Aviv. I only wanted that gaze. I was going to say, "Stay with me," or maybe I only thought it with all the strength of my soul, when the light began to vibrate in a different way. The music of the voices, which before was a distant whisper, became a gentle but irresistible command. I felt a sudden sadness, a melancholy that weighed more than lead. The presence stopped. I didn't see a human face, but I saw goodness personified. And the knowing came again, sweet and bitter at the same time. Not yet, my son. Your work in the land of shadows is not yet finished. You have seen the truth. Now you must be the reflection of it where fear still rules. I wanted to scream. I wanted to beg not to return to that cold bunker, to that broken body, and to that deadly pursuit. But his will was a song of peace that I could not disobey. I felt the light begin to recede, or rather, I felt that I was being pulled by an invisible thread, back to the darkness, back to the weight, back to the pain. The architect would have to return, but he would never be the same again. Eternity had left a mark on my spirit that no intelligent system could ever erase. I was falling back into time, back into my own skin. Ah, that tug. You know, my children, gravity is a cruel mistress for one who has tasted, for even a second, the lightness of paradise. It was as if the entire universe turned into a leaden hand, grabbing me by the scruff of the neck and squeezing me back into a diving suit made of flesh and tired bones. It hurts. Oh, how it hurts to come back. It's as if every cell in the body complains about the weight, the thick air, the limitation of being just matter. The first sound I heard was not the harmony of celestial voices, but the rhythmic, metallic, cold beep of a heart monitor in an ICU room. I opened my eyes and the light, that white, sterile, fluorescent light of the hospital in Tel Aviv, seemed like an offense to me, a cheap and sad imitation of the glory I had just left. The smell of antiseptic and medicine burned my nostrils, replacing the scent of ozone and holiness from eternity. I was back. The architect had survived what military doctors called a severe arrhythmia caused by acute stress. But while they checked my vital signs and adjusted the tubes, I could only look at my hands. The same hands the system wanted me to use to manipulate destinies and destroy lives on the board of shadows. That brushed aluminum flash drive? Those secrets that would have me archived forever? They had no weight anymore. I felt like laughing, a weak laugh that almost tore my tired lungs. Nothing on earth has real weight when you discover you are loved by the one who holds the galaxies in the palm of his hand. The system thought I had had a psychotic break. I handed in my badge, erased my tracks on the servers, and let the architect die for the official records. To the world, I became a ghost. But to God, I finally began to exist. Since that day, my dear ones, I no longer see assets or informants. I no longer see targets or threats. I see souls. Every face that crosses my path, however simple, is an entire universe that the Creator designed with the same infinite affection He had when receiving me into that golden light. Death? Oh, it has lost its sting. To me, it is no longer the dark wall I feared in the bunker. It is an oak door that opens into a garden. and I have already seen what is on the other side, and it is too beautiful to have any fear. It is the home we spend our whole lives looking for in the wrong places. Now, look at me. Come a little closer to the fire. I know you also carry your own flash drives, sorrows you keep as if they were treasures, secrets that weigh in the pocket of the soul, past mistakes you think heaven will never have mercy to erase. Listen carefully to what this old man, who has already felt the cold of death and the heat of the throne, has to say. Do not wait for your heart to stop beating to begin to forgive. Do not wait for your breath to fail to say, I love you, or to seek the face of the one who knows your name since before the foundation of the world. The world out there will try to convince you that life is a shadow war, a cold strategy where the strongest discards the weakest to survive one more day. Do not believe that lie. It is a script poorly written by those who have never seen the light. The only architecture that remains standing when the lights of this world go out is that of the love you gave without asking for anything in return. Forgive. Forgive today. Let the weight fall right now. Eternity is not a place we go to in the future. It is a presence we can carry in our chest, here and now, while we still breathe this heavy air. I am just a ghost to the intelligence files, a name crossed out in an old report. But I am a beloved son to the Father, and you are too. Sleep in peace tonight, my children, knowing that at the end of all the labyrinths and betrayals of life, there is no dark bunker or death sentence waiting for you. What there is an embrace that never ends, and a light that never goes out. May his peace, the one that exceeds all the understanding I once thought I had as a strategist, guard the heart and mind of each of you. Now, rest. The architect is gone. What remains is only gratitude.